What's up, and welcome back to Nowstalgia Pod, your weekly look what's going on in pop culture. My name is Pat Sheen. I'm here with my co-host wearing his desperation dress, Dave Martinson. Dave, what's going on, man?
Gang, man. How's it going? Happy 12th of November.
Happy, 12th of November. Crazy. The year is quickly approaching to a close. And unfortunately for us, or fortunately for everybody else, the culture is not slowing down. We got a shit ton to talk about today. So before we jump into it, please hit that subscribe button on YouTube, soundcloud.com/nostalgiapod. Give us a rating and review on iTunes. We appreciate all of the feedback. Something that kind of bummed me out today, Dave. Stan Lee, creator, well, not the sole creator, but a very major contributor, the person that moved the Marvel universe to the next level and kind of kickstarted into what it became today, the juggernaut it is today, passed away today at 95. Not gonna say it was unexpected. He was 95 and he's had some health issues for the past year, but a sad loss. How are you feeling about this?
Yeah, it's interesting because I remember, a few weeks ago I was reading that follow-up the Hollywood Reporter did regarding the whole scandal that was going on with him, and was his daughter taking advantage of him? He was getting these
elder
people,
abuse,
right? And all these people that were in his life, and he was getting rid of them, but during that interview they explained that he doesn't hear that well anymore. He's more soft-spoken, things like that. So you could tell he wasn't as spry as he's looked in past cameos, let's say. But 95. I mean, shit. He was born in the fucking 20s. Dude lived a long life. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, and it's pretty crazy that he was still appearing in all these movies. And I know that they shoot his cameos in bunches, so it's not like he's going to every set and flying around the world for
shooting.
Exactly, if that. But he was still, still the face, still well renowned. Obviously, not really contributing that much to the stories anymore. What do you see his legacy being? I mean, obviously as the head of Marvel, but what do you think people are really going to remember him for?
Well, yeah, I mean, you kind of said it, but he co-created damn near every Marvel character people think of. The only one he really didn't have a hand in was Captain America, which kind of predated him a little bit. But he worked with Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko. He basically created everyone: the X-Men, Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, Thor, the Hulk, Daredevil, Black Panther, Iron Man, etc. Right? So all these touchstones that started off counterculture and then became obviously mainstream entertainment. But then you also don't want to forget his time as the editor-in-chief of Marvel and writing stories and really pushing what comics could do in the storytelling medium, and obviously this is decades ago now. But then as he moved up through Marvel, becoming publishing the whole company, and then really forming it, and working with Avi Arad and guys like that. So I mean, it's a fucking big legacy, man. It's a long obit, but I think overall it is lasting. He created one of the most powerful brands there ever was, and succeeded for years, and he helped shepherd to a certain extent through the 90s bankruptcy, right when they sold. So it's he should be commended for a lot, but I think a lot of people, especially nowadays, probably just associate him with the cameos and stuff, right? Oh yeah, he created the characters. Oh, he's in the movie. It's always funny, right? There he is. But if you go back and read the comics he actually wrote back in the day, you would kind of be impressed with what he achieved. So it's a tough loss, but at the end of the day, he lived a long life. So
yeah, and just a quick button on something you said about how he pushed the comic book genre to what it could be and expanded what these stories were. By the time he kind of really took over at Marvel and started writing, superheroes were very idealistic, that they didn't really have anything wrong with them. They mostly were just fighting these bad guys and they were perfect beings in a way. He introduced, the trouble superhero. I think the first one was Spider-Man, and he was worried about having dandruff and what people were going to think of him with that, which seems silly, but for the time, late 60s, early 70s, it was a big change. And that's what's made these characters so interesting now, is that they are complicated and they are complex and they have motives and they have struggles just like other people. And it made them a lot more relatable. I think that one of the things I read talked about this. It's like unsanctioned at the time or wasn't like supported by Marvel at the time, but he wrote about Spider-Man's best friend having popping pills and how that became a very popular series of comics, and that kind of propelled those storylines more into the mainstream. So definitely a revolutionary comic book writer and creator, and someone whose influence can really not be overstated at this point. So sad loss, RIP Stan Lee. It's kind of hard to transition to something not related. So we have a lot of music to talk about today, but before we jump into it, we've been reviewing a lot of hip hop over the last couple of weeks. I mean, I think we've set our piece on our rock versus rap and what's happened to rock. Check out that video on YouTube if you want. Hip hop is it's the main, I would say it's probably the main source of music at this point, where the most exciting things are happening with the most exciting artists right now. And we talk about XXL every year, and it's earlier than we usually do. We talk about it right before it's supposed to be announced, but we want to talk about it because there's a lot of really exciting artists at this point. And I see you smiling. I want to take it from here.
Yeah, I mean, shit. The cover comes out in June 2019, but we're going to be talking about it now because there's interest in it, and there's already prospects that seem, they should be on the list. So why wait, right? And I think talking about the XXL is always cool because, like you said, hip hop is so hot. Hip hop is so buzzing. The most streamed genre, the most engaged with on social, all of that, right?
Yep.
And because of that, making a 10 person XXL freshman list is more challenging than it once was, given all of the people that are in the mix. So I do think it is an important thing to talk about, even if the viewer personally might not put any stock in who makes the list or not. And again, artists, we've talked about this last year. Check out our video when we predicted all 9 of the 2018 correctly. You don't need that to be successful these days, given this look at the state of hip hop. But I think it's always an important cosign, and it's a nice, mark in the history books. So thinking about it for next year, this early is still pretty tough and interesting. So happy to get to it now.
Yeah, and I take most of the credit for the correct picks the last couple of years. If you go back and watch those videos, we know that was mostly me. I did have a couple people that I thought would be probably likely, or some people talk about before we even really started talking about it in our text message together. And one of our guys, Juice WRLD, we just reviewed an album very recently with Travis Scott, and
Not
he
Travis,
seems to Future. Sorry, geez. Who did Travis release the album with this year?
The Quavo album in December.
Yes, that was it. Sorry. So that's what I was getting confused with. So yeah, he dropped the album with Future recently, World on Drugs, and we gave it a pretty positive review. So we said that they had good rapport back and forth, and it seems like there's a lot there to like and a lot of potential there. Do you think he's going to be on this list?
Oh, definitely. I think the only question of Juice WRLD being on the list is similar to Little Pump this year. Is Juice WRLD too famous / too wealthy to bother with the list? At the end of the day, the artist has to decide to go to New York,
say yes,
shoot these videos, do the ciphers, all that, right? Juice WRLD signed, I think it was a $4 million deal at the start of the year. Lucid Dreams peaked at, I think it was number 3 this year. He had a few other really big songs, and then quickly joined with a rap A-lister, Future, and released a pretty successful follow-up, which also did really well commercially. So I think Juice WRLD, he both is new enough to be warranted for this list, has the hits, clearly has the popularity. Check his socials, check any of his views. He's obviously, people are engaged with him, and also he is interesting and different. He has a unique sound to him, and while his lyrics aren't always as good, I think he's pretty introspective rapper at times, and talks about like addiction and drugs and stuff like that in interesting ways. So I do think he has the content worth being recognized. So it's not just a popularity thing. So yeah, I think Juice World would be the star of the cover next year, assuming he wants to go through with it. So I'd hope he say yes.
So he seems to be a shoo-in if he says yes. Mudboy came out recently. We didn't talk about it,
Mud Boy.
but Shaq West seems to be catching a lot of popularity and a lot of fame since this release. He seems like somebody else that seems like a shoe-in for this list. Am I wrong on that?
No, dude, Mo Bamba is just massive.
Yeah,
It's just a massive
yeah,
song,
biggest
and
song of the
it's
year.
for sure. And it's crazy because the song came out in early 2017. It's just that no one was really listening to it. I mean, the song came out when Mo Bamba was still at A&M, or sorry, Texas, not A&M,
Yeah.
and because like they're friends from New York, they know each other, and the song was like a cult hit, right? He released the other song, Live Sheck West, Die Sheck West, and then he makes the video for Mo Bamba in January, and then just picks up. He signs the Cactus Jack and Good Music, so that's a big co-sign there, and then the song just took off. It's gigantic. And then he releases Mudboy, as you just said, a few weeks ago, and we didn't review it, but I it's an interesting project because I don't think it's totally. I don't have a totally positive take on it, but there is some other hits in there, or at least like signs that Check West isn't a flash in the pan. Songs like
Mm-hmm.
Kyrie and Gmail, stuff like that, and he just has so much energy on all of his songs. He's actually kind of like a chanting delivery of sorts that I do think that there's a lot there. And of course, the cosigns, Travis
Yeah.
Scott and Kanye slash Pusha T. I mean, it's tough to beat
Mm-hmm.
that. So couple that with the sheer magnitude that is Mo Bamba these days. It's the hottest song in any club. He should be on there as
Yeah.
well. So he'll be there.
I think Sheck West, his delivery is like made just to make bangers, basically, because
Yeah.
it just gets everybody chanting with them. Like Mo Bamba, everybody just wants to sing along and like rage to that song, and like his other songs on his album are similar. So he's gonna be on. He's an absolute star. These two guys made an album together, Gunna and Lil Baby, and Drip Harder. While I listened pretty passively to it, I still found myself bopping to it a lot, and I think that there's a lot to like between these two. Um, do you think that they'll get picked, or do you think that making this album together might actually hurt their chances?
No, I don't think it hurts their chances because they were both established in their own way solo before they really Strip Harder. Little Baby came on earlier. It was actually not that long ago, like this last December. He was on the Quality Control compilation, right? And that's how he kind of came up. He was like around Migos and the Quality Control guys. Like, hey, you're pretty good at this. You should start rapping. Then he makes some mixtapes. The next thing you know, he's massive star, just like the other, like Migos, right? And then Gunna, who was a friend of Lil Baby's, also was at it a little longer than him. Then Drip Season 3 comes out early in this year. Is very successful. Some hits off that. And like you said, they collabed together. That album went #1, did like 100,000 first week. Drip was it Drip Too Hard, like big ass song. So I think these guys, like as we're going through this list, they kind of represent the mainstream, the current, the foundation of rap right now, Atlanta. Like these are Atlanta guys, and you always need them on the list. And I think they're big enough and already have put out a fair amount of songs already to warrant this. And yeah, again, they're guys that maybe they wouldn't bother because they're quite big already, but they should be there.
Mm-hmm. Um, you know, it sounds like we have a couple that will probably be there, and I think there's one more that I'm almost certain it's going to be there. This is your guy, YBN Corday.
Corday, yeah.
Corday. He dropped this album earlier this year. Basically, it's a mixtape, I guess. I don't know. It's 23 songs, which, first of all, this guy knows how to game the streams. Get those plays up, boy. But really, I mean, you look at like Kung Fu seems to be like his major breakout song.
Yeah.
But then he's only got a couple other songs that really seem to have jumped up off this album. But I feel like with Kung Fu's massive appeal, he's got to be a shoo-in.
Yeah. So that YBN mixtape, Corday is only on a handful of those songs because most of those songs were made by YBN Namir, who we talked about at length. He made the cover this year, as well as YBN Amadi J. They were the first two of this YBN clique to pop off, right? And then Corday came around third. His first song anyone really heard was Old Hittas. It was the 1985 J. Cole response. And everyone was impressed because Corday came out with a lyrical, thoughtful response over J. Cole's beat. And it was actually good. And then you listen to Corday talk and make more songs, and you're like, oh, wait, this guy is like very smart. And one of the cuts on the YBN mixtape is about being pulled over by the police. And it's a really, again, a lyrical cut. And then like Dr. Dre uh, started fucking with Corday and was in the studio with him already, right? And again, like you said, he does not have a lot of music out right now, and I think he's only like Namer, and like he's like 18, I think. Yeah. Corday was born in '97. He's very young. Um, so what's that make him? 21? Yeah. So
21.
he has not been on the scene at all, but I think that cosign and the clear promise that he presents as a lyricist would warrant him be on the list. So I really hope he'd be there.
So these are a couple other people. I just have questions if they're eligible or if you think they'll make it, because I think two of them are definitely eligible. One that I'm not sure, T Grizzly. Is he eligible?
Well, I thought T Grizzly should have made it this year.
Right.
And like we said, we got all 9 correct, but they didn't pick the 10th spot. And T Grizzly was my 10th guy because Little Skies, a bunch of people like turned it down. They just didn't fill that last spot. So I thought T Grizzly should have already been picked. He just released his second mixtape this year.
Like this past week.
Yeah, Still My Moment. And it's like they don't really roll it over that much, It's like you could see it, but it's like guys that got passed over this year for like domestic violence stuff, right? So 6ix9ine, Dex, Young Boy, they won't be on there for 2019. But someone like Grizzly, who was just skipped for whatever reason, maybe he just wasn't interested. Yeah, I think he's worth it. He's still new enough, but I'm probably just gonna assume he's not picked again, But he's worth it. I mean, he has those hits. He has now a steady body of work. He's worked with Dirk and Meek Mill and stuff. So he's got the good music. So I really wanted him to be on it this year. So if they threw him a bone for 2019, but I don't expect it.
Someone that I'm guessing doesn't have enough body of work yet, potentially could change before they pick 070 Shake. She showed out on Kanye's albums this summer. A lot of buzz after Ghost Town, but she hasn't released, I don't think, an official project yet, right?
She has, I think it's the Glitter EP, which came out right before Ye came out, but that's like 20 minutes. Gotcha. And I think that's her first official release. She might have one other EP on top of that. She's pretty young. She's pretty new. She would be an interesting pick. She'll love to some ladies for once on this cover, but also she's different. Sonically, vocally, she's in a different lane. She certainly isn't Little Baby or Gunna, right? So picking 070 Shake would be cool. And again, got the good music cosign, so I think she has the package. It's just there's no singular hit that's hers. Obviously, Ghost Town is a feature. But she would be an inspired pick for sure, because I still think people might not be familiar with who she actually is, even if they heard her on a Kanye album, right? Yeah, that's a good one. I would like to see that.
I would like to see that too. I think probably one of my favorite surprise moments off the Kanye album. NBA YoungBoy. No.
Well, they passed him over this year because he hit his girlfriend. So no, they're not picking him.
Okay. I didn't know he had the kind of issue. Okay.
If he didn't have that, they would have picked him this year because he's very, very successful. Tons of streams, a lot of hits. But no, he's damaged goods.
You mentioned Lil Baby before. Oh no, sorry, we talked about Lil Baby. You mentioned Lil Mosey. That was who was next on my list. Lil Mosey.
Yeah.
We gonna see him on this list?
I think so. He's 16. He's very young. And Noticed, similar to Mo Bamba, his hit song Noticed came out last year, took a while to bubble, and now it's really big. It's been a staple of Rap Caviar for months. And he just released his debut official project. He had some SoundCloud projects, but his debut project, North's Best, a few weeks ago. And yes, you listen, it's lyrics. There's no lyrics there. But what he does have is he kind of has an interesting flow for trap beats. And his two hits, the next hit off of this North Best project is called Kamikaze. He just got a Cole Bennett video. And similar to Mosey, on his hooks, he has really cool drum beats that just make the song sound really catchy. So I think his ear for production is like very underrated for a kid as young as he is. So I would think he'd be there just because Notice got really big, and we already have the signs of more to come with this new project. So I think he would be there. It would make sense. But on the other hand, he is quite young. If you want to make him wait another year, I wouldn't have a problem with it.
So who else do you expect to see on this list?
Yeah, so I mean, I think Juice World, Check West, Corday, Baby and Gunna, those five are like damn near locks.
Definitely.
Like those are
Okay.
the first five people XXL will ask. It's just a matter of if they say yes, right? And then all these other
Mhm.
people are, we're making the case, right? Um, all the Chicago people we talked about them for this year's list, but like No Name in theory would be the closest, given that she just released Room 25, another acclaim project. But all these Chicago artists like that, I just don't see them as having enough mainstream appeal or recognition
Yeah.
to get picked, which is disappointing because they would really benefit from this exposure. But I would root
Mhm.
against that. So Smina, who we're gonna talk about, Saba, Toki, all these guys, they're not gonna get picked. They're just too underground. Um, so who's that leave? I mean, Jay Critch is a New York rapper. He's in like the A Boogie camp. I've never been
Mhm.
too impressed with him, but he's getting popular. I could see him getting picked. Young bands, Little Nar. I'm not really crazy about these dudes, but they're kind of popular now. Maybe Zillakami would be an interesting one because he is like similar to Little Peep, who we're going to talk about. He kind of merges like metal themes and like
Hmm.
tons of like heavy rock influences into his rap. He was featured on Denzel Curry's album earlier this year. He's very interesting to me. Um, Again, he'd be a pretty off the wall choice, but I think
Mhm.
that actually be fired. Comethazine, another interesting one, maybe. Um,
Fantasy.
yeah, great name, right?
Yeah.
Valet, we talked about him for this year. If he releases another project and he has like a hit on there, I could see them
Mhm.
going with Valet, given the good music cosign and whatnot. And he's been in the
What
news
about
given the flows.
Saweetie?
Yeah,
A
so
couple of songs off her album I like a lot.
yeah,
Ice
and I
Girl or
yeah,
Icy Girl's great.
yeah, Icy Girl, fucking banger was what it was
Mhm.
insecure. Like everyone knows Icy Girl, right? And Sweetie smartly followed off that high maintenance EP. I mean, Up Now was her last single at G-Eazy on there. But I think she's dating Quavo or briefly dated Quavo. Like she's clearly positioning herself to be a big star. And I think if she releases one more project before this cover choosing time comes, I think she should get on there because she's getting a lot of recognition for someone with not a lot of music. But she has that hit. She has kind of the cosign of just general Atlanta rap, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, I would not be surprised if she was there.
Nice. All right. All right. So we got, I think, like 7 definites, it seems like, from you
Yeah, and then
about them.
yeah, and I mean, I would love to see Rico Nasty on here. She's got a
Hmm.
lot of music out, so she's probably got passed over, but I love to see Rico Nasty on here. And then lastly, Jane Smith is going to drop another project at the end of this week. That's pretty soon after Sire came out. He had that like electric remix version of Sire earlier this year, so he's more active in music. So wouldn't be surprised. Jane's still pretty young, but maybe.
We'll see. Sounds like uh, there's some definites, and then still a lot of room for someone to come up and
It's
potentially steal some
early.
spots. So we'll be talking about it. Stay tuned. Why don't we jump to some of the music that you mentioned, though? Smino Noir sophomore album, follow up to 2017's Black Swan. I'm guessing it's BLK
Black
I'm gonna
Swan.
say
Shout
Black
out
Swan.
Natalie Portman.
um, his debut album was really, I think a lot of his acclaim comes from he's a really good lyricist, and he also tries a lot of different things with his music and has a lot of different sounds to his music.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the same thing for this album in my book. His lyrics are really good. The way he delivers lines is very interesting. He makes things that you would never expect to rhyme somehow rhyme. um, but I think really what I liked is only a couple of the songs sounded similar, in that, especially as you go through the album, there's points when he sings, points when he does things with his voice that you wouldn't expect. Kind of reminds me of Kendrick Lamar in a way, in how he can storytell and lyrically he's very solid, but the way he uses his voice to really create different moods and feelings, and deliver different meanings to his songs, I thought was really impressive. I'm talking a lot about the album. Did you like Noir? Noir.
Uh, yeah, no, I kind of view it the same way I view Black Swan, where it's there's a lot of cuts on there, but like you said, he changes his vocals a lot. Like the delivery just straight up changes from song to song,
Mhm.
right? Which I think is, like you said, one of his better strengths. Because I think sometimes some of those deliveries he has can feel a little samey, a little too indebted to Chance the Rapper. He still
Mm,
has sometimes a nasally voice, right? And other times I think he can almost sound like too sleepy, like he's almost like slurring his words intentionally, right? But because
mhm,
he jumps around with that, again, with the semblance of a pretty consistent, production palette, I think that's for the better for him. And I like there were some cuts I liked on Black Swan, and similar to this, there's some songs I really like on here too. I mean, you listen to Cover, LMF, those first two songs, then go down and listen
mhm.
to freaking Crushed Ice with Valet. They sound totally
Yes.
different. And I think that's what's really cool about Smino is he's an artist who's effectively an independent rapper. And
Mhm.
again, we can see his clear what he's clearly indebted to from Chicago, who he's influenced by, but he's clearly making his own wave, which I think is really cool, really commendable. So yeah, I think Noir is a good listen. Don't miss it.
Yeah, definitely a good listen. And I think we're probably gonna put a song or two of it on the album or on our best of Nostalgia Best of 2018 playlist on Spotify. Crushed Ice is one of my favorites. Also Spins, I really liked. Probably my favorite one where he's mostly singing in it. So I'd recommend those two. You mentioned a couple of good ones, including Crushed Ice. So that seems that'll probably be the one that makes it. Cupcake. So Cupcake, was she an XXL freshman? Like, how did you find out about her?
I found out about her from Anthony Fantano. Um,
Shout out the needle drop.
yeah, Cupcake, pretty prolific, but she's only 21 years old. But I think because she exists outside mainstream hip hop, she's still pretty anonymous to people
Mhm.
that don't read music sites. Like
Yeah.
that's how you find out about her. But it's she's definitely her own artist, that's for sure.
Yeah, what makes you say that? Because I think people kind of describe her as like sexual and raunchy. What do you think really makes her stand out?
Well, I think that's that. She's just, I mean, the pun intended. She's very raw in her lyrics and her storytelling. But it just she has like a big personality, even when she's not sexual in her lyrics,
Mhm,
right? And I think that's really endearing because she doesn't just blend in with the wave, you know.
mhm.
That's really been the case ever since she popped off back in 2016. Then again, her first two mixtapes are called Cum Cake and STD, so she does lean into
Yeah, I was
it.
gonna say she definitely leans into it. All right, so Eden, is this along the same lines for you? Is it more of the same from Cupcake, or what do you think of this release?
I really like it. And it's cool because this is the second album she released this year. E for Eyes came out back in January. We didn't get a chance to talk about it, but I think this is more of the same but better. I think almost all of her verses I really like. I think she's a really charismatic rapper. I think
Mhm,
the only time I get, you know, less enthused is sometimes I think her hooks are lacking. I think that's probably her one of her shortcomings. Songs like
mhm.
Dangled or Starbucks. I just thought those were weak hooks and kind of take away from
Sure.
her verses. But most of the other songs, I mean, she has really punchy bars and
Mhm,
really witty, funny punchlines more often than not. So I think and especially a project like this that's only 33 minutes. Um, I think it's a lot of time was put into it, and I think you can really jump in and listen to any of these songs and be entertained because of that delivery, because of that flow, and then you also appreciate the wit that she brings. So yeah, I'm a big fan for sure. What do you think though? Is this your first time listening to her?
Yeah, this is my first time listening to her. I found her to be just really engaging and really funny. I did find I didn't find the production all that impressive on this album. Like the beats didn't really catch me on a lot of them, and I ended up feeling like songs like Quiz or Typo. I felt like those were kind of like throwbacks, like early or like mid 2000s, early 2000s hip hop in a lot of ways, which isn't necessarily a bad thing if that's what she was going for. Just kind of caught me off guard. But yeah, she's really funny, and I think I more than anything, I just like Garfield, for example, I was like, why the hell is this song named Garfield? And then when she got to the chorus, I was like, wow, like how she brought that around is hilarious.
Yeah.
I also really liked Prenup. Yeah, and she brings in a Latin flair to some of her songs, which I think is really nice. Kind of reminded me of a little bit of Cardi with "I Like It Like That."
Sure.
So there in the shorter songs, like give me all the short songs for, Smino's album was 55 minutes. Muse with all their alternate reality versions was like an hour 12. Um, and this is after reviewing what two or three albums last week that were 30 minutes or shorter. I was like, good, give me this short album. I need to get through this quick. So definitely check her out. The Underachievers, Dave. You turned me on to these guys. We talked about them last year a little bit with their third album. They dropped their fourth one, After the Rain. Do you feel like they underachieved on this album?
Yes.
Hey, yeah.
Yes, I do. I was disappointed in After the Rain.
Mm-hmm.
On one hand, I thought they made some interesting choices. I thought there's a few times where they farmed out sung hooks by somebody else, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I like that. I think most of the time, except for that first single. What's it called? A seven something. I didn't like that song. I thought that didn't work too well. But 7 letters, that's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, like, UA has been around a long time. They are a duo from Flatbush, part of the Beast Coast movement, obviously, with Flatbush Zombies, Joey Badass, and Pro Air, artists we talk about whenever they drop, right? And UA has always been the least well known of that, that movement. And I've never really understood why that was, because on one hand, they're repping like that real New York rap, and they're also just making a lot of fucking hot songs. Like, they have hits on every project, and they make cool videos, and they're great live. They're the first show I saw when I moved to Boston, and it's just been weird to see them not really grow their fan base super large, as far as I can tell anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they released something like After the Rain, I was like, I wouldn't have blamed them if they leaned into, I wouldn't say lean into radio, but leaned into something more trendy to just try
Yeah.
to attract someone. There's no shame in that, especially when you've been making music a long time. I mean, Joey did that to good effect.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I think maybe getting people to sing hooks, make different kind of music. I mean, they made, quote, softer songs on this project. I think that was a good idea. And the problem is that Issa and AK often have flows that sound very samey.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's almost like you listening to that song. It's like you just listen to the other song. They sound too similar. And I think maybe part of that's into the production, like they've always been really into like ethereal, cloudy, third eye shit, right? and you can kind of like hear that in the production at times, even when it's not the subject matter.
Mm-hmm.
So, I was disappointed. On the other hand, like Channeling and See Through, I did think Issa talked about addiction pretty well on there. But yeah, I was unfortunately let down by this as a big fan.
Yeah, I've checked out a couple of their past songs, and I think I listened to parts of the album that we talked about last year, but I just didn't really find this very engaging. I've used the word engaging, I think, for 2 albums now, but to go from like Cupcake to like the Underachievers, I just found it so much more like laid back, and it kind of was like After a Rainstorm in a way. Like, I know that's like a kind of a corny tie-in, but like, after like a storm, there's like that period where things kind of just like settled and there's not much going on. That's kind of how this felt, was kind of listless. Their flows, like you said, were definitely very similar. And that kind of makes it not a super interesting album. So I think they have a lot of potential. You bring up a good point, which is something we don't always talk about, is artists are trying to make a living and they need to become popular and they're trying to reach certain levels of fame. So sometimes they need to switch things up to that might not be totally true to what they want to do or what they feel is best, what they think will actually be successful. And I think a lot of times, like, we've given, especially like rock artists, shit for like not trying more, or staying, playing it safe. It almost feels like they went a little too safe with this, because like Gold Soul Theory is a song that really stands out as one of their past songs that it's very intriguing, very interesting. It's just totally unique, and that's what worked for them. So I'd like to see them kind of get back to it, but it's tough. They want to reach probably a different level of stardom. Like you said, you don't really understand why, and it's hard to calculate the next move sometimes. So Underachievers, I think I'll definitely give them another chance whenever that next album comes out. But
sure.
They have a ton of potential still. Kind of brings us into somebody who had a lot of potential, tragically passed away last November. Lil Peep, his first posthumous drop. I don't know if it's his only one. Come Over When You're Sober Part 2. Like I said, died last year with an overdose on his tour bus. It's hard to I guess it's hard to talk about this without mentioning X, since the single X's single drops this weekend, and also the single off this album that's blowing up, Falling Down, involves X on it. But why don't we talk quick about posthumous albums? What's your take on them? How do you feel about them?
Yeah, I'm pretty out on them generally. Just go listen to what Diddy did to Biggie after Biggie died. Duets, The Final Chapter, Born to Go, all that crap. And I think like it's just taking snippets. Well, Diddy really was egregious because he put a fuck ton of features on all those posthumous releases, right? And sometimes those artists Biggie didn't even fuck with, right? But in general, just cobbling together snippets and like half-baked song ideas into quote songs and a full product just to make money off the estate, I just find it's pretty shallow and fucked up thing to do. And that's kind of my now for X in particular, who we're gonna get. I mean, they're releasing this new album, Skins, next month, right? And then Peep as well. A lot of these songs, a lot of these ideas, they're literally like, it's just a hook. You made a song by recycling this one hook that the guy did. Like there was no verse. You just redid the hook the whole time. It's just like, I just get really annoyed with like the greed of it, you know? And I think in particular this single that Peep and X have, guys who never met, by the way, never really communicated at all.
Yeah, and Peep didn't. I think was public. They didn't even really like X based on the things he did to women.
And that's the controversy. I don't think that's like quote confirmed, but people that Peep were close with are saying that. And whether that's true or not, the original version had McConan on there, which is the following song on this album, right? But no, of course they had to put him with X because X equals streams. So
yeah,
and this is the first release of Peeps on Columbia Records. He never did that when he was alive, but the estate, which includes his mom, includes his close friends, they decided to put together this. Now I think in the case of Peep, it doesn't sound as egregious because apparently a lot of this music was recorded around the time he made part 1 last year, and they just worked to finish this. But I always get rubbed the wrong way. And I think the first song on here, I was like, man, this sounds way too cleaned up. He was always really into like those like lo-fi vocals, right? Like that, like distorted as fuck, right? And that first song didn't sound like that at all. I was like, it just sounds like a label cutting it up for, for money. So I always kind of get rubbed the wrong way. But I mean, on the other hand, I did think this sounded better. This is probably the most enjoyable Peep listen I've ever had. I wasn't a huge fan of him in life. Like Awful Things was a big hit. I see the appeal of that, obviously. The Bright Side, same way. I get it. I wasn't that big on him, but this one sounded better, and I think that's partially because the label was gonna, make it sound more appealing for the benefit of streams. But what did you think?
Not super familiar with Little People, like you mentioned. I think it was Awful. I'd heard that track and didn't really grab me, but this was a pretty enjoyable listen. And I think it's kind of for some of the reasons you talked about. He sounded a lot different on this album. He sounded a lot clearer, a lot crisper, which, I mean, for better or for worse, I think that's what really draws people to this album. And it's like there's not that many features. It's him, and it's him in a way that people didn't usually hear him, and whether he would have been okay with that or not, obviously we'll never know. But it seems like everything, all the production, the way that this came together was done trying to put something out that would honor him and not just something that would profit off of him, which makes me feel a little bit more comfortable with it. Posthumous albums, like recently, Prince's estate released a lot of music that he didn't really want released, and it's incredibly disrespectful to the person, but this seems to be done in a very tasteful way. I do think Falling Down is a freaking catchy ass song, and like for all the problems with it, I think it's one that's a very fun song to listen to. And I like how Peep, infuses hip hop, rap, and rock, together in pretty seamlessly. And I think that there's not really a terrible song on the album, although I did find it kind of creepy how many of the lyrics were related to like like death or leaving, almost kind of uh, I don't know, predicting things to come in a way. Any songs on this other than Falling Down that you think are worth mentioning or noting?
Uh, was it 16 lines? I
Mm-hmm.
thought that was a catchy hook. Was it Runaway? I think it was called. I mean, there's some. I think that sounded good. And I think you hear that and you hear the potential. And I think that was the main takeaway when he passed. It was not that Lil Peep had released a really singular work per se, but he was an influential figure that clearly was going to be a star. As this infusion of SoundCloud rap and emo and all of this, right? But he was clearly on a path to start. I mean, he was very popular, despite, in my opinion, not having any music that was that great. You know,
Mm-hmm.
um, and you see that again here. And like you said, the morbid stuff is now pretty off-putting to listen to at times. But that was always what he rapped about, whatever. That was nothing new. So, again, it's a sad story, like just like it was a sad story a year ago. But I have a feeling this will be pretty appealing to a lot of his fans if they can get over the nature of his creation. And I will say, John Carmonica at the New York Times wrote a lengthy feature on how this album got put together, by his mom and his
Mm-hmm.
close friend who's a producer, and it's an interesting story. I actually find the whole story of that over this past year pretty interesting. So read that if you're interested.
Rounding out our music section of today's pod, talking about the ninth studio album from rock band Muse. Are you a Muse fan? I don't know if we've ever really talked about them. When we talked about what's happening to rock music, we actually pretty egregiously forgot to mention them.
Do we not mention them at all on that?
I don't. I don't think we did. I mean, potentially, but I think they're one of the ones that we forgot to mention.
Mm.
Yeah. So, are you a Muse fan?
I'm not like I don't like dislike them as much as I dislike other modern bands.
Mm-hmm.
I think they have interesting guitars, which is cool. Yeah, so I'm not like as down on them as I like I'm not a big Foo Fighters guy, Pearl Jam guy. I'm not really into that, but I think I'm not as so negative on Muse the way I am on other popular rock bands, right? But I mean, regardless of my opinion, they are one of the most successful and famous rock bands of the 2000s.
Yeah.
And I think, again, their first album came out in '99. It's one of the most, it's gonna be what the most talked about rock album of the month, from an old ass
Definitely.
band. That's the story of rock music these days. But I did not mind this album beyond its ungodly length. What did you think? Are you a bigger Muse fan? Have you listened to a lot of those other records?
Yeah, it's interesting. Their earlier, like their first three, Origin of Symmetry, Hullabaloo, and of course Showbiz, their first one, I'm not super familiar with, but they really hit their groove and gained a lot of their popularity between 2004's Absolution and 2006's Black Holes and Revelations. And I ride hard for those two albums. High School Pat was very into those albums and played a lot of Muse at track practice and before soccer practice. I honestly, like, when I was that age and I was just really starting to like explore music and start to build opinions, I saw them as like the modern day version of Rush. Now they're obviously not as like instrumentally influential as Rush in a lot of ways. I think their guitar work, like you mentioned, is probably the most standout piece of their sonic form, but just like three really top notch artists, and I think lyrically they've stayed pretty consistent. They're anti-government, or at least like anti-big government, and they kind of used this album to go back and forth between a relationship and government. But really, I think music just can create some really awesome stadium songs. Like you think about Madness, off their was that 4 years ago now? No, that wasn't off Drones, I don't believe. No,
I'm not
Madness
sure.
was definitely before. I think it was off the Resistance. a while back, but that's like a great stadium song, and I think that they really try to stay in that lane here while also infusing some 80s vibe into this, which I mean, if you're ever going to infuse 80s vibe, I guess right now is the time to do it. So it made the songs enjoyable, but like it didn't really impress me. And it kind of left me a little bit disappointed, but at the same time, I don't think I was expecting Muse to blow me away with this album. I think I kind of know what they are at this point, and they gave us that.
You know, it's interesting. They the sonics of this new album actually sounded pseudo contemporary in terms of like rock expectations,
Mm,
and they actually kind of reminded production wise almost reminded me of a band that doesn't have guitars, 21 Pilots, you
mm,
know, whereas like subtly lean into electronic things from time to
yeah,
time, you know. I
mhm,
just you could hear the parallel there. Um,
certainly.
and that song Madness, by the way, was off The Second Law from 2012.
Ah, gotcha.
But
Danced around it.
yeah, it's funny because they were kind of like driving the bandwagon on like the government's listening to you, watch out. It was like them and MIA were on the
Hmm.
shit like 10 years before everyone else, right? Like pre-Snowden. It's kind of funny to think about in retrospect.
Yeah.
Um, but also, you know, you listen to Muse talk about this new record, and they'll be like, they almost like downplayed the rhetoric this time
Hmm.
around. I think it was not so subtly stating that they can see the danger that nationalism has had these
Hmm.
days when it's used that way, and it's nice of them to understand, uh,
Yeah.
you know, that. So it's you know, I think it's long, but if you like Muse, if you like this type of guitar-driven rock music that actually sounds a little contemporary, yeah, I think it's pretty good. Actually, given my standards for rock enjoyment these days, I was entertained.
Yeah, it's funny because like Drones, their 2016 album, I think fell a bit flat and wasn't super liked by the public. And I feel like they almost like overcorrected in a sense because like the last what is it, like 8 songs on the album are all just like remixes or the same songs just delivered differently.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the spot
something. Go ahead.
the Spotify version of it's what the super deluxe edition, and it's like an
Yeah,
hour and 30 plus or something. It's like, yeah, it's all those. It's like we don't need that. Sorry. Like if
yeah,
you're gonna release like a sessions side EP or something or B side thing, do it separately, please.
yeah, yeah. The pressure featuring the UCLA marching band. I was like, how hard could you try to just like get all the normies to come and listen to this album and like that song? Um, which I mean, good for them. Get their popularity, get that money. But
Migos method.
um, yeah, I gotta say, probably one of my least favorite Muse songs that I've listened to off this was wait, I wrote it down here. Um, oh, Something Human. Like that song is just absolute shit. But I really liked Blockades. I thought the guitar work in that was awesome. And Dig Down, obviously, and Pressure and Thought Contagion are just what you'd expect from like a popular rock band at this point. So
Mhm. One final question: did you like this more than the latest Interpol record?
if you want to hear my thoughts on Interpol, check out our review on YouTube at Nowstalgia Pod on Twitter. Um, I'm gonna steer away from that and into Homecoming with our guy Sam Esmail. We're waiting for Mr. Robot, that final season to drop. But in the meantime, he was like, you know what? I'm going to make every podcaster excited to possibly have a movie about them someday. So I'm really excited. Homecoming, based off the podcast from Eli Horowitz and Michael Bloomberg, starring Julia fucking Roberts on her small screen debut. I mean, what? Stephen James, Bobby Cannavale, Shea Wiggum, and Sissy Spacek. Killer cast. And you know what was the best part about this? Every episode was 30 minutes long. Awesome.
Some of them were less, 27 minutes.
And I loved that. General thoughts about Homecoming, then we can dig a little deeper into the specific things we liked.
Yeah, I was a big fan. I have it my top 10 shows of 2018.
Oh, yeah.
Liked the season a lot. I thought it was to use the word of the podcast. I thought it was a very well paced and it was a very engaging show.
Yeah.
It seemed like each episode ended at the perfect time. You know, it was like it wasn't so much to hit you with stingers, so much as it like, it just ended like really at the right note, and then
Hmm.
they would let the scene play out as the credits rolled, which I thought was a really cool touch.
Yep.
Um, so I think the 30-minute runtime it is nice because there isn't a lot of fat on this show, and it's interesting because it's a conspiracy thriller, a mystery show, but it's not like a mystery box show like, you know, like a Lost or something where it's like the mystery is so focused on your enjoyment of the show and figuring out what that is, right? That's not this. It's not like
Hmm.
that complicated. Um, and then also same as my old guy who we gas every time we talk about Mr. Robot, but he directed every episode of this show, and it really shows because whether it's shifting to that 4:3 aspect ratio and condensing the field of view,
Yep.
these cool overhead shots or just the general visual palette, much like
Hmm.
Mr. Robot, it's a beautiful show to watch that looks unlike other shows. So I think, it really is the whole package. And the fact that it's a quick listen, it's watch, it's like 5 hours long, it's
Yeah.
uh, really great. And they already greenlit a second season. That was, before they even shot this one, it was a 2-season order. So
Hmm.
very excited to see what happens. But in the meantime, I mean, I didn't even need to care about the plot all the time. It was just great to watch and watch the good performances in a cool way. So yeah, I was a big fan.
Yeah, and it worked so well for TV, the plot, because with some of the we'll talk generally because I don't expect everybody to have seen this at this point. It's just kind of came out to Amazon this month, but with the way that the story kind of revolves around the main character figuring things out,
Right.
with Shea Wiggum's Department of was that complaints or Department of Justice
Defense.
defense
DOD.
character figuring things out as well. It You are kind of left at the end of each episode being like, I want to know what happened there. Or like, what was that point, or where was that going? It's super bingeable. I kind of had to almost stop myself from watching too many episodes at once because
Super.
27 minutes, you're like, I could just throw another one on real quick and move through. The acting is great. I thought the rapport between Roberts and James was great, and Bobby Cannavale just getting to be who he is in every single movie and show.
He really is great at just being a fucking slime ball.
Yeah,
Like
so good at it.
Ant-Man, Master of None,
Mhm.
Robot, everything he's been in recently. It's you almost know what to expect, yet he's still great at it. So watching him cook was cool.
Yeah, it was actually funny because I was thinking about how in Robot he had that like awesome scene at the end where he just kind of starts losing it at the end
Oh, with the
of what is that
axe.
scene?
Yeah.
Yeah, with the
Yeah.
axe, and he kind of had like a similar scene when he really started to confront Wiggum's character here.
Mhm.
Um, I think overall, just it's beautifully shot. It's not similar to Robot in any way because Robot's so unconventional, and this
Yeah.
almost was like very classical in terms of how it was shot and framing and some of like the scenes of like setting the stage or setting the scene. So really, just a great show. I think it's gonna be my top 10 for sure for the year. Any other thoughts about this? I don't really want to spoil just because
Mhm.
people aren't gonna have seen it by now.
Yeah, one, I really liked Shea Wiggum's glasses in the early
Yeah.
going, the way they pulled apart. Thought that was fucking awesome. Also, Hong Chow, who was really great in downsizing last year. She's really come along recently. You know, starts off as just a secretary, and you're like, little undercast for Hong Chow, but no, she gets some good moments later in the season. So I thought that
Mhm.
was cool. And I do like where the show left off for season two. Moving forward, that was cool. And yeah, Shea Wiggum, he's yeah, him and Bill Camp, who we're gonna talk about in a little bit. Are they the two best like character actors right now? Like, I feel like they're in everything. They can do any kind of performance, and they're always really good. I just like watching them.
Yeah, they're up there. I had the same thought about Camp when I was watching the obviously Wildlife, which we're going to talk about here in a second. But I do think that there's one more that you're forgetting, and he actually was just nominated for 3 movies that were up for Best Picture last year.
Ah, yes,
Michael Stuhlbarg. I
yeah,
think he takes the cake right now. He's just super. Everything he's in is fucking fire. But yeah, those 3 to me are like perfect character actors right now. Um, so we're gonna be talking about the Homecoming season 2 whenever it comes out. Did they give a time frame for that?
no, I don't think so. Maybe end of next year. I don't think we have confirmation on what they're gonna what their plans are. But it's a nice hit for Amazon. Uh, they always need more of those. They don't
Mhm.
they don't have as many as Netflix does or HBO or anything like that. But yeah, we'll talk about the season again. I'm sure
Yeah.
for end of the year. So next month we'll talk about it again.
Amazon might have the best show of the month 2 months in a row with this and Maisel coming out next month. So
Yep.
it's a good time for Amazon. What do you want to talk about first? Wildlife or Outlaw King?
Let's do wildlife. Shout out Bill Camp.
Ah, yo, shout out Paul Dano. Was it for like the past 3 months we've been or 2 months we've been talking about these actors becoming directors? Jonah Hill with mid '90s, Bradley Cooper with A Star Is Born. Now Paul Dano with
Mhm.
Wildlife, sitting at 94% on Rotten Tomatoes. Pretty impressive for a debut. Starring Jake Gyllenhaal, Carey Mulligan, Bill Camp, and Ed Oxenbould. He did a great job with a pretty difficult role, I'd say, for an actor his age.
Yep.
General thoughts about Wildlife. We'll talk spoilers because people can go see this now.
Yeah, it's funny because when I watched them, went in knowing it was really well liked, and I knew Carey Mulligan was really good in it, which she is. And as I'm watching it, and then as the end, I was like, yeah, that was really great, And I think I have it in my top 15 on my movie list
Mhm.
right now, maybe top 20. It's right there. And then it's like it's not like I was super like maybe entertained is probably the right word. I wasn't like super like on the edge of my seat watching it, but the whole time I was just like appreciating what it was doing or trying to do. And then I thought about it a lot after I watched it, which
Mhm.
I guess is just a roundabout way of saying I'm not sure I know what the point was, but I liked trying to figure it out,
Mhm.
so
So it
it,
sounds like what you're saying is like those wildfires. It was a slow burn for you.
God.
Check it
Yeah.
out. There it
Yeah.
is.
And it's funny because if you want to like go against the film, I think there are a lot of themes being explored. One of which is the theme of the fire, which comes back throughout every act of the movie.
Mhm.
At the end of the day, you're just watching a marriage in what is it, the 50s,
60s. I think it's at
60s?
1960.
Yeah, disintegrate through the eyes of a 14-year-old boy. That's really what the crux of it is, and it's based off a John Ford novel. It's the first John Ford uh, novel to be adapted at all. There's been a lot of false starts with that.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, I just think watching the emotion on Gary Mulligan's face and Jake Gyllenhaal to a certain extent as well was, it's not something we've got a lot this year. And I thought the way the movie ends, uh, that was probably the most like on the edge of my seat for that,
Mhm.
despite it not being something where a lot happens. It was a really well crafted movie, and yeah, I just appreciate what it was, even if you know, maybe some of it went over my head.
Yeah, I think kind of what you talked about is I feel like this is a very like filmmakers movie. Like if you appreciate film and you really like the way stories are told, you'll appreciate this. If you really only like film to be entertained, I don't know if you're gonna be entertained the whole time because there are some down points of it. I mean, I think Mulligan's performance is it's kind of crazy how she like toes this line between like being okay then like really not being okay so quickly. Like
Yeah,
the whole scene at Bill Camp's house for dinner
oh, yeah,
was like she was unbelievable in that scene. Not only like how quickly she was flip flopping, but the way that she was using her face and her body to like get so much across. It was such like a physical scene for her, even though she did have a lot of speaking lines. Um, I mean, Gyllenhaal. I was just thinking, like, has he been in any other movies this year? Then all of a sudden he pops up for this, like, kind of crazy because he's probably one of the most. I don't know about lauded, but he's he's up there in terms of people saying he's one of the better, like, skillful actors, and
yeah,
he's kind of just in the small movie.
yeah. It's good. It's a good point. I mean, he was in Stronger last year, the Boston Marathon Survivor movie. He'll be in Spider-Man: Far From Home and next summer. But I think this was it for this year, right? But yeah,
He's an interesting guy.
it's clearly a smaller role, and honestly, not the most likable character. you know?
No.
So it would, but I mean, that's also, I guess, what Gyllenhaal does is he really can jump around and show his range, and to a
Mhm.
certain extent, that's what this was. Just playing honestly a kind of pathetic character.
Yeah. And the thing I think I appreciate most about it is just how Dano used the setting so effectively. Like the whole drive out to the fires, with like the rolling mountains of the Rocky Mountains in the foreground, and
Mhm.
um, just like framing the shots, zooming in on Oxenhold's face when he's like looking at the fires. Um, just really well done. And I think he's got a nice career ahead of him as a director. He's already been a pretty successful actor. Um, I think where sometimes the movie does fall short, like you said, the point kind of goes over your head. I think at points, and you're trying to kind of figure out what's the real message that they're trying to get across here. And there might not even be a central message that they're trying to get across. More just telling a story and letting you take from it what you want. Um, I also think that uh, like for example, Bill Camp's character is, I think, like super realistic, but at the same time, like they don't necessarily explore certain parts of it that I think were really important. Like they basically made you believe, and you're seeing it through the boy's eyes, which makes a lot of sense, that this is his mom's new boyfriend, when really his mom was just being used in a lot of ways, and
Yeah.
you don't really get that till the third act when Gyllenhaal goes to confront him. So I think some of that could have been told a little bit more directly, but overall, I thought it was really well done. And it's probably like top 15, top 20 for me this year for sure. I mean, how many movies have we seen? Like 45, or you've seen like 60, right?
Mm-hmm. 60,
So
61. Yeah.
that's, we say like top 15, top 20, but that's actually like pretty good in a very strong movie year.
Mm-hmm.
Although Fantastic Beasts gonna push those all to the bottom, right?
I'm seeing it in Dolby Cinema, so that'll help,
Hey,
right?
Expecto Patronum. That movie's gonna
Hey,
need some help. It's sounding like. Why don't we finish up with Outlaw King? You know what I liked most about this movie?
Chris Pine's dick.
That was second. Number one was it was on Netflix, so I watched it from my couch. I'll give any movie I can watch on Netflix some points. For in my book, David Mackenzie. This is his first movie since Hell or High Water, which was nominated for Best Picture. Uh, Outlaw King with Chris Pine. It's a period piece. Like it's a period war movie, which is all I think I feel about it. Just because I don't really love these movies. I didn't really love
Uh-huh.
Braveheart, although I've seen parts of it. I thought some of the action and fighting was good, and there were a couple of nice like relationship moments. But otherwise, I just kind of was like, must fucking suck to live during that time. Like I'm so glad we live when we do.
Yeah. Um, it's just like, yeah, hammer that home real quick. It's just like, fuck. They Robert the Bruce's wife is back at home. Oh shit. I hope the prince doesn't come, otherwise he's gonna rape and kill us all, and we have
Yep.
no say in the matter. It's not up to us. Like it must suck.
No bueno, dude. Also, I mean, I know that they cut this part, but so much William Wallace talk and then no William Wallace payoff. I was like, man, just wanted to
well,
see what you were gonna do with it.
well, I mean, he's dead in like the first 15 minutes, so
I
it's
know,
tough
but
to.
I just wanted to see him. He was supposed to be in the movie.
Well, and that's what's actually really interesting about this is when it premiered at Toronto a few months, like what, 2 months ago. Uh,
Mhm.
it was not, it didn't do well. It was very long. It was like 2.5 hours, I think, and the pacing was just all off. And that was really what the everyone was saying, and that's despite the fact that I think there is good performances in this. There's pretty shots of Scotland and well choreographed action, all things that
Mhm.
should be positives for the movie. But because it just seemed messy, it was pretty savaged, right? And then, so I think to a lot of the critics' credit, they rewatched this new cut, which is 23 minutes shorter, and gave it a fair shake once more because this is the version that me and you and everyone else is actually going to see, right?
Mhm.
And a lot of these re-reviews, I think all the re-reviews are more positive, and a lot of them actually became positive reviews, right? And part of that was cutting things that didn't really matter. I think the pace of the movie that they saw was very slow to start. Right, part of that is
Mhm.
him meeting Wallace on a chance encounter in the woods.
Yeah.
Um, there was like this other chase scene, but they just kind of established and like slowly drew up Robert the Bruce's motivations. But the conflict didn't start for a while. I think that's what like lost people at the
Mhm.
premiere. So I think, credit to David Mackenzie and to Netflix for giving him this chance. They gave him 2 weeks to recut the film right after, and he also credit to him for realizing it, seeing in the moment, being like, ah, shit, this isn't working. I need to fix things. And it's funny because he never really made movies that long before. So I think that took a lot to kill your darlings in that regard. But the cut we did get, I like these kind of movies. I like war films in general. I like medieval films like this that don't have a fantasy element. This is not King Arthur: Legend of the Sword. This is just let's watch Robert the Bruce kick some fucking ass. Let's watch Aaron Taylor Johnson be a fucking unhinged psycho and murder people. It's fucking
That
badass,
was awesome.
And I think it was really pretty. And it's funny because the movie cost 90 million, expensive, but I mean, I would have thought it was a little more expensive, to be honest, given it's shot all in location, all over England and
Mhm.
Scotland. And uh, I think it really started off. I really liked how it started with, all the Scottish nobles, bowing, bending the knee to Edward, right, and like having the truce for the first conflict, right. And then they have that quick duel where they establish that Edward II's a fucking prick, right?
Mhm.
And then Edward comes back out and it's like, hey guys, let's have a good time. Let's use our fucking shiny catapult and just burn this castle. And it
Yeah.
was just like, it was all done in the one take. They go out of the tent, in the tent, out of the tent. And, some like shit talking in the duel. Like, I thought that was a really cool scene. But overall, I was kind of like on the edge of my seat just watching it happen. And it's funny because I was pausing it a lot to like go on Wikipedia and be like, oh yeah, he was played by that guy in Braveheart. They're the same guy. Oh, I get it
Mhm.
now. And it's funny because as a person with a history degree, English history always was a little dull to me, despite the fact that there was tons of war, right, and tons of people getting
Mhm.
like killed and betrayed and stuff. But I guess seeing it on screen like this was cool. I'm interested to hear what you would think of Mary Queen of Scots when it comes out in December with Saoirse Ronan and Margot Robbie, because this is basically taking place in the same area, like 200 years later.
I'm probably gonna be very bored by that story as well. Honestly, like that opening scene was probably my favorite part of it. I felt like, and this might be just who the character was, but Robert the Bruce didn't really capture me as the main character, and I mean the whole story revolves around him. It's
Mhm.
it's his story, and I don't think Chris Pine acted it poorly. I think just the character in general was he's very introspective. He internalized a
Yeah.
lot and kind of reserved, even in some of his tactics until this actually brings me to another point. But he doesn't really start propelling or taking chances to figure this all out until his wife is captured and he finds out about it. It's almost like a very traditional movie in that sense, like war movie in that sense, like general who's just trying to like take care of things and get by, and then his wife is captured, so now he's got to start making these crazy chances and really trying things. I was like, all right, man. Like I've seen this
Mhm.
story. This character isn't super enthralling. Some of the fight scenes are good, so I'm gonna keep watching. But overall, I just was kind of like, it's a very meh. I'd give it like a 60, 65 if I had to out of
Mhm.
100. So, I mean, but it's on Netflix, so bump that up to like a 69 for me.
Yeah,
Hey.
nice.
Any
Also,
last thoughts on this?
shout out the guy Stannis, Stephen Delane, as Edward,
Yep.
rocking that blonde wig. I actually thought all the times where he roasted Edward II, his son, was just really funny. He's
Mhm.
like, was it that scene before he rides out right before he dies? He's just like, I had hoped that I would never have to ride again. I hoped wrong. Like he just like those
Yeah, he
roundabout
was
way,
great.
just shits on his son in front of everyone. You know.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, it's interesting. I saw some criticism going around that the film treatment of female characters is pretty rote, pretty,
Mhm.
backward. And it's like, It's tough because I think Florence Pugh, who really busted on the scene last year in Lady Macbeth, she's definitely a young actress to watch. She'll be in a Little Woman, the Greta Gerwig movie. But
Mhm.
I think she's pretty good as his wife in the scene she has. But yeah, she doesn't have a lot of scenes, but also the role of women, I think in this specific struggle was probably was from what we know, not that intense. I mean, there were some scenes between Pine and Pugh that were cut, I heard, and I did think they had good chemistry in the
Yeah,
movie. But yeah, I guess that's a fair take. But you know, I think, if anything, the main takeaway, of course, is that Chris Pine is just lapping the field in the Chris Wars these days.
oh yeah.
He continues to make the best choices and have the most success. And it's awesome to see because he was always my pick, and I always laughed when everyone's like, no, it's Pratt right now. It's like, bitch, please. Pine has always been the dude. And no more evidence right here.
Well, I think there was a period, especially when it first came out, where Pratt was up there. It's actually funny. I think Pratt would be in third right now because your guy Chris Evans getting out of that Captain America contract. He couldn't be happier. Even if he doesn't have anything lined up, he's just happy to be done.
Yeah,
So,
it'll be interesting because I want to see what is Evans going to do now. I think he's done some theater, but like because
mhm,
Hemsworth is interesting because he has made some cool choices apart from Thor, but very few of those movies were actually successful financially, and that is a part
right.
of his calculus, right? But Pine, in between Star Trek, side role in Wonder Woman, now this, he's doing all
Hmm.
these things, and apart from I think Rush, Hemsworth has had a bunch of misses. Like Bad Times at El Royale movie, he's barely in, did not do well
Miss.
either. And Pratt quickly has so far come across as more one note, between
Hmm.
Jurassic World and Guardians. So yeah, shout out Pine. I think this is a cool movie to do because you do have a lot of pressure on you to make a movie that is literally the chronological sequel to fucking Braveheart. And Braveheart's a very popular movie, granted historically inaccurate to write for a lot of reasons, but well
Hmm.
known, right? So following that up is not easy. But I thought Mackenzie, who is a Scot, paid a lot of care to this, and yeah, I think Pine and Taylor Johnson uh, you know, they brought it for this movie, and not without its flaws, but again, for a Netflix movie. On the other hand, I thought this would be cool to watch on a big screen, but getting to watch all that shit in sanctity of your own home is also pretty cool. So, you know, shout out Netflix for dropping the bag for this one.
Shout out Netflix. We're gonna wrap it up there for this week. Dave, what are the people looking for next week? What should they watch or listen to?
Well, definitely watch Widows. Steve McQueen, stellar cast, of course. You know that.
Hmm.
Fantastic Beast: The Crimes of Grindelwald will also be out.
Yeah,
I'm invested for the lore. I want to see any
I
nuggets we
know.
get. My other thing is like I don't have a high standard for Harry Potter movies. Most of them aren't that good anyway, so that
There
doesn't
was a
offend me. So I just want to
there
see more.
was a review that said that there's a reveal that's like the biggest Harry Potter reveal ever in a movie.
It's
So,
not
which I
the
mean,
biggest.
it's not that, yeah, it's not that big a deal because I mean everything's gonna be revealed. There's no books to go off of, so anything we don't know is gonna be a reveal. But I'm still interested to see what it's gonna be.
Right. The Ballad of Buster Scruggs will be on Netflix. Similar to how Netflix let Mackenzie cut 20 minutes off of his expensive ass war movie, they also let the Coens turn their anthology series into a movie. So
Mhm.
I'm interested to see how this comes out. And of course, on the music front, uh, yes, Lord, Anderson Paak Oxnard is here.
Yes, Lord.
So we'll be talking about that, no doubt.
Absolutely. So hit that subscribe button. Go to soundcloud.com/nostalgiapod so you can get our podcast any way you want to listen to. Share us with friends. We appreciate it. And follow us on Twitter at nostalgiapod to stay up to date with all the stuff that's going on in pop culture that we're not talking about. If you have anything you would do want to talk about, hit us up there. Leave a rating and review. And we'll see you next week.